Hello and welcome back to the Boropolis podcast. As always, I am joined with Nathan. And last podcast we said it had to be 6 points out of 6. And Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough side have provided us with exactly that. Finally, Nathan, this week's podcast is going to be a happy place. It's going to be the place where almost, I'm sure you probably feel a little bit of vindication, the fact that you've stuck with the boys, you haven't panicked, you've maintained your levels of optimism. And yes, it's only 2 wins, but we've done it in pretty emphatic style. And it's a good place to be going into the international break off the back of 6 points, 9 goals. The XG has been absolutely slapped in the face. And so have QPR and Luton, to be honest. How are you feeling, mate?
Very, very pleased. Thanks very much, Chris. Yeah, we spoke about it last week, and one of the questions that you posed to me was about my optimism, and was it actually coming from a place where I'd seen something that other people possibly hadn't, and I sort of even questioned myself in my answer and said that the first half at QPR would offer me the opportunity to see whether or not that my optimism was something that was there and had substance to it. And look, we've got 6 points and we've absolutely obliterated 2 sides this week. So yeah, very, very pleasing, and it just sets a very nice mood heading into an international break.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already excited to get into the football, to be honest. There's so many goals to talk about, so many good moments. There is just one talking point that I want to touch on personally. I've already kind of ran it by Nathan just to let him know that I was going to talk about it. But skipping forward a little bit, you may have noticed that Tony Mowbray was on BBC Tees yesterday. And for the first time, really, he kind of opened up about his health and the illness that he's had, and kind of, a lot of football fans up and down the country, Middlesbrough fans, have been aware of kind of what's been going on, but not to the extent, not kind of the type of illness that it's been. And it was just something that is kind of a little bit close to home at the moment, and I wanted to touch on it. So by no means am I bringing the mood down, because this is a positive thing. And listen, I think what's important is I'm not for one moment suggesting that this podcast is the most listened to podcast in the world. It's absolutely not. And, Boropolis in general, I still, as you do, Nathan, we often discuss that even the fact that however many listeners that we do get tune in and listen to us basically waffle about Middlesbrough itself is a little bit mental, really. And obviously the following on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, whichever way you look at it, it does provide somewhat of a platform for our voices. And I feel like when you have even a very small platform in the grand scheme of things, personally, I want to, project as positive and good messages as possible via the small platform that we have. Now, you may remember a few months back, at the beginning of the season, if you've been an avid listener or watcher of the podcast, that early on in the season, we did miss a podcast. And, especially with all the optimism at the start of the season, it seemed probably from the outside a little bit of a strange one. I'm not sure if anyone or many people even give it too much of a thought, but, you might have thought, well, new season, all the optimism, Middlesbrough got all these new signings and it's an exciting time. And it absolutely was the case. But going back to the original point of kind of why that podcast didn't happen earlier on this season was like Tony Mowbray, and ironically enough, the exact same illness. Tony Mowbray was diagnosed with bowel cancer. And so actually a few months back was my dad. Yeah, it took me, my whole family, all by surprise. A fit and healthy bloke who, you see some adverts on the telly sometimes and you think, it would never be us. It would never be our family. It would never be my dad. It would never be my brother. And look, as much as cancer is something which is incredibly prevalent, you know, everyone's aware of the devastation that it can cause, and all of the research and money that goes into basically trying to prevent it and come up with, you know, medicine and research into basically trying to beat the battle against cancer. And when I referred to it, going back to when that podcast didn't happen, about, you know, sometimes things in life are a little bit more important than football, and I still stand by that. And what I will say is, at this stage, and it seems topical. It's part of the reason why I wanted to bring it up, and it goes back to really a message. I don't know if people have listened to it or people have watched it. Tony Mowbray yesterday on BBC Tees, I mean, spoke about football in a manner where it was just so interesting, but he also spoke about his diagnosis of bowel cancer and the importance of basically men especially, and men and women, but men, males, boys of all ages, basically being open and honest with their health. And if something doesn't feel right, going and getting things checked, and not being afraid to talk about it. And look, it's a strange link, because as I say, you might listen to this podcast and you don't probably know me and Nathan as individuals, but as I say, my whole reason for talking about this is I just want to reiterate exactly what Tony Mowbray says, and basically push out the message for anyone listening to this, even if it perhaps makes one person listen to this, a male, female, anything. If something doesn't quite feel right, then please do talk about it. Please do go and have a conversation with your doctor, with a family member. Try and book an appointment. I know it is difficult, of course, with the NHS in terms of the pressure that they're under with going in and getting an appointment sometimes. But because it's something that, and I mean, listen, it wasn't me, it's something that my dad's gone through. And I just want to say, fortunately, it looks like, because basically a random test dropped through the door and my dad done that test, and it was kind of flagged up quite early, that fortunately we're kind of coming to the other side of that. And I mean, personally, just referring to my dad, throughout the operations and procedures that he's had done, kind of every possible delay or thing that could have possibly kind of gone wrong has gone wrong. But as I say, over the last few months, it's been incredibly tough, especially for him and obviously my family. But we're coming to the other side of it, and he's starting his treatment. And it's strange because it's the same procedure that Tony Mowbray has had done by all accounts. And I'm sure my dad will be listening. He's mine and my brother's biggest supporter. If he is listening, I just want to say, because probably this Boropolis podcast wouldn't exist if it wasn't for him. You may know from the accent, I don't know. I was born in Northumberland in Newcastle. So really, I've got no reason other than my dad to have the burden of supporting Middlesbrough. But if he is listening, I just want to say, for everything that he's been through, I couldn't be prouder of him, of all my family, for the way that he's dealt with it and the way that he's basically trying to kick cancer's arse. And it's, as Tony Mowbray was saying yesterday, he said something really that kind of hit home, and it was basically, especially males again, you know, no son wants to lose their dad. And I'm not going to lie, it sounds really, really brutal, but there was points during the whole process of everything that my dad's gone through and is still going through where I thought, to be honest, maybe I won't get to go to the Riverside with my dad again. Maybe, you know, that was, unfortunately, it was going to be too much for him. And as I say, I want to, by all means, use this as a positive message, because although there's been setbacks and he's battled through this, we're coming into a point now where because it's been caught early, and because he's had operations and procedures, as I say, that he's now being given a chance, and he's having treatment. And like Tony Mowbray has done, he's looking to come out the other side of it in completely positive light. But I might be waffling a little bit. I don't know. It's such a difficult subject to sort of discuss without getting emotional and sort of getting my words wrong. But the main message I want to put across is, and especially for males in general of any age, please, if you have a test that comes through the door or something's not quite right, or you notice a little bit of a difference in the way that you go into the toilet and it might seem a little bit crude, then please do have a conversation with a doctor. Please do speak to a family member, because that one conversation could change your life, but it may also save your life. And I think that's the message that I want to get across. And Dad, as I say, I know you'll probably be listening. I absolutely love you to pieces. You're a complete inspiration for everything that you've gone through. And what's quite funny, Nathan, is obviously you've been aware of this, but the big moment of returning to the Riverside was actually the Bristol City defeat at home. Thankfully, since then, we've had a few more good performances at home where that special moment can be the wins following on from Bristol City. But it was very typical Boro for that result to happen. So, listen, I've talked about it enough. I'm so proud of my dad. I almost felt a weird sense. I don't know Tony Mowbray. I felt a weird sense of pride about him talking about it and him talking about an issue that sometimes doesn't get the coverage it deserves in terms of men's health and being open and honest with your family, with your doctors. And I want to push that message out there as much as possible, because as I say, sometimes those conversations, the ones that are the hardest to have, can potentially save a life. And it means that you get to go and watch Middlesbrough stick 5 goals past Luton at the Riverside. You get to cherish them moments and go and experience them, because those conversations flag these issues up early. And look, I'm completely aware sometimes it doesn't work out like that, but it gives people the chance. And yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. You may have skipped through it. I don't know. Now we can just talk about Middlesbrough being really good at football this week, but I felt like it was almost something that I had to touch on. I couldn't have looked at myself after hearing that yesterday. I felt like it was the perfect opportunity to highlight it. And as I say, use this sort of small platform to just bring it to light and give it the attention that it deserves, Nathan.
Yeah, 100% echo everything you've said there, Chris, and you've been massively courageous, you and your family going through it a couple of months ago, and yeah, we stuck through it, and yeah, plodded on through that with the transfer news and all the other podcasts that we did manage to put out and edit and get up and keep on top of the social media accounts as well alongside all that. So yeah, credit to you, Chris, and your family. But yeah, Borough, what a week.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It seems like quite the sort of introduction into the podcast, but as you say, what a week. I mean, kind of going back a little bit to my initial introduction at the podcast, we said we want 6 points, we need 6 points, and that's exactly what Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough team have given us. Going away to QPR, there was, and I mean playing Luton as well, there was the initial thought of, these are two of the sides where stereotypically a Michael Carrick Middlesbrough team may struggle against. And although actually in both games there was sort of similar themes of a little bit of a slow start and we didn't quite get going, ultimately all those underlying stats and all of that underlying data seems to have finally been pushed to the point where it's becoming end product for Borough. And the score lines could have been even more so sort of in the advantage of Middlesbrough's goal scoring column, because throughout both games we had multiple chances. It did take us a little bit of time to sort of get into our flow, but Nathan, as we've touched on, I mean, at times over these last 2 games, of course we'll go through it chronologically, starting with QPR, but at times during the midweek and yesterday we were irresistible, really, in terms of the attacking output and our end product as well.
Yeah, 100%. And we spoke at length last week about our squad depth and the drop off in quality isn't all too much in most positions. But we did also speak about the that right side and the drop off between Ben Doak and Isaiah Jones of this moment in time. And obviously, Doak wasn't in the side last week. We were hoping that he was going to be in the squad on Tuesday night and for the rest of the week. So pleasing to see the starting 11 on Tuesday night. Obviously, Johnny Howson took in Hackney's place in midfield, but the big sort of talking point was Ben Doak back into the team and played a massive part in the early stages of that game, and obviously gets us that first goal with his beating of the QPR fullback cross into McGree and goal.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 points I want to make about this and just individual performances as such. Firstly, is a little bit of a jovial point. It recently become November or Movember as you know it. The Riley McGree Tash is back, and that variation of Riley McGree is one that's irresistible. I'll use that word again at times. And I'm, of course, referring to watching him on the football pitch, Nathan. But yeah, another irresistible Boro winger. And when I use the word winger, everything that you want from a winger, everything that everyone loves watching football, watching wide men, he's got it in abundance. Ben Doak, he is just getting better game by game. He is so exciting to watch. His trickery, his will to get to the byline, his for such a young age, his confidence in his own ability. He's honestly, and look, in terms of Borough fans of our age, we were kind of treated to watching Adama Traore and him really kind of finding that connection with Tony Pulis, and for a few months watching someone as exciting as probably Middlesbrough fans of our age have ever had the pleasure of watching. But look, I'm not quite putting them in the same category just yet. But Ben Doak, my goodness, he gets fans off seats. He literally, as the phrase goes, I should say, he had the QPR fullback on toast. He was. Have you ever seen that photo? It's like a meme of the fullback getting down on his hands and knees and praying to the winger as if to say, "Please God, someone help me out with what I'm dealing with here." That is exactly. I mean, I was expecting it at times during the QPR game. Ben Doakey, what a wonderful talent Liverpool have, and fortunately we have on loan at this moment in time.
Yeah, look, we spoke in the summer at length about our transfer business, and as it was sort of drawing to a close, my plea was to try and sign a difference maker from the Premier League, whether that be on loan or if you're able to sneak someone in on a permanent who just has that X factor, that bit of quality at this level, which is just almost a level above. It deserves to be playing at a higher level. And Ben Doak, look, a player that hadn't played all too much senior football before coming to Middlesbrough, only 18 years of age, his first senior sort of loan. He's flourishing more than pretty much any player that I've seen in the championship so far this season. He is absolutely outstanding, frightening to watch, direct, and just an absolute menace for defenders. I'd hate to play against him. Honestly, I think any team that we come up against this season will earmark Ben Doak as, yeah, he's their danger man. Stop Ben Doak, and you're probably going to have a real good chance of stopping Middlesbrough because he is simply fantastic. And having him back in the side on Tuesday night just gives you something different. It gives you an outlet. Play it to him. It 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 takes out probably two players now. Teams have got to the point already, and we're in November. where teams are having to double up on him because he's too good, and in turn opens the space up for your creative players like Finn Azaz, like Riley McGree, or whoever else is in the team to to unlock the doors themselves if you can't give the ball to Doak because he's marked out the game. So yeah, he's simply fantastic, and it's a great ball across straight into McGree, who makes a really good run to that near post. And look, I don't actually know what it comes off. I think McGree just sort of makes sure that he can make contact with the ball and just make it a goalward shot. But we'll take those all day. We don't care how they're going, especially playing away from home. After last week, a lot of question marks about Boro and the inconsistency. To go 1-0 up away from home's massive. My plea last week was to go to QPR and get at them and try and break down the door early, and we did that. We got into the lead, and very quickly after it went to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as you say, again, I'm not actually sure what part of McGree the initial goal comes from, but I'm going to put it down to good improvisation and good kind of use of the mechanics of his body to somehow kind of form a shape, which, as you say, led to a goal bound shot and give us the lead. And you touched on it briefly. It was a kind of almost like we've done one of these podcasts before. You highlighted a part of Middlesbrough's attacking play that is helping them flourish at the moment. And that was essentially the interest from opposition defenders in Ben Doak, creating other spaces for our other attacking players. And one of those attacking players who's also flourishing at the moment, Finn Azaz. I mean, there's a bit of a competition, as I'm sure we'll get into, about who got the best assist of the night. You can talk us through the goal, but obviously the second goal from a Boro perspective, Tommy Conway is in the box at the right time, finishes off fantastically. But the real piece of quality in this goal is the absolutely delicious cross come through ball, come just piece of excellence from Finn Azaz. It is inch perfect, perfectly weighted. It is literally a striker's dream of a pass or a cross, whatever you want to describe it as, from Finn Azaz.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, the interest in Doak from defenders, as I spoke about a moment ago, the left back gets drawn to him, and that opens the space for Azaz, who drives into that sort of right half space. Great ball from Ayling to pick him out, and actually watching the inside match day, that the angle as the pass is played into Azaz, he's already looking across that line to see where Conway's making that run. Plays the plays the pass perfectly. It's sort of in that corridor of uncertainty where the defender's trying to get there, but the keeper doesn't necessarily know whether it's his sort of place to come and try and get that. Takes Steve Cook out the game with the pass, and yeah, it's a nice little finish from Conway, just in there to just tap home. Yeah, it's a really nice move to go 2-0 up into the break was massive. Seny Dieng was fantastic all night. Before half time, he made a couple of really good saves.
Yeah, there was three or four, wasn't there, really, where he's pretty much denied a certain goal.
Yeah, and to be fair to Dieng, he's come under quite a lot of criticism over the last couple of weeks. So props to him for those saves. Really important, especially the one from Salah after Howson was dispossessed on the edge of our own box. But yeah, unfortunate to concede that goal, really. Just set piece. You don't win that first contact. And yeah, it's unfortunate the way it goes in off Anf. But yeah, I think at that point I started to feel a little bit like I'm hoping that this isn't going to be a Norwich again or a Watford. But look, we restore our 2-goal lead, and you can talk me through it, Chris, the assist from Riley, but for the sake of just a little bit of a debate, I'm going to ask you, does he mean it? Or is he just trying to play the ball up the channel?
Now, actually, in fairness to you, Nathan, you produced the notes that we're both currently looking at as we're recording this, and I've seen this question quite early on this morning. So thankfully, I've had pretty much all day to actually think of it. To be honest, I actually do think he means it. And I think potentially the only part of in terms of, I'll break down in terms of what I mean by he meant it. I think he knows exactly the type of runner that Latilath is. I think, for example, if Tommy Conway's up front, it's almost a different decision in a sense because he spins and hooks it round the corner, but he probably knows that he can put that extra little bit of power on it in the fact of Latilath's going to beat most championship centre-halves in a foot race. So that element of it, I think he swiveled and probably hit it into an area. He probably doesn't anticipate that it's going to be as kind of perfectly weighted and as angled as what it was, in the sense of it basically frees Latilath to just go one-on-one with the keeper and then do exactly as he done. But I'm going to put this down to, and this is the way that the way of thinking that I've kind of come to today. When a player of Riley McGree's quality does something, I almost want to always lean in favour of the player, because I have no doubts that Riley McGree has enough quality to, in his mind, think of that pass and execute it. However, there is times in football matches where players of a certain quality do things and you think, you haven't meant that. There's absolutely no way. And I'm going to put it down to, if you remember Willow Flood scoring from the halfway line against Swansea, probably over a decade ago. Now, he is a player that you wouldn't quite associate with quality, end product, almost a level of genius. He did not mean that goal. And I don't think, even if he tried to, he would ever be able to execute it again. Whereas with Riley McGree, I think he could actually execute that pass. And it probably has, in his mind, been something that he's not just hooked the ball down the line. He's thought, I'm going to try and put Emmanuel Latilath through on goal. So I'm saying he meant it. I'm siding with him. I mean, it's to no shock of anyone that listens to this podcast regularly. I'm always going to side with him. Let's just talk about the finish. I mean, we had a good chuckle about it yesterday. Latilath. We always have the conversation about sort of his finishes and how often the finishes that get the best out of Emmanuel Latilath is those instinctive ones where he doesn't have time to think about it. The worrying thing was when he went through on goal, he had quite a while to think about it. He went round the goalkeeper once with a nice bit of skill, rounded the keeper. He then takes it too far. Steve Cook at this point is committed. He's kind of already like fallen. Probably in his mind, it's all in slow motion. And maybe he always was in control of it. He knew exactly what he was doing. He just wanted to humiliate the pair of them. But to me, I think he does run it a little bit too far at first, cuts back. Steve Cook's already kind of just flopped on his arse in the goal, and he sticks it in the back of the net. But quite funnily enough, he actually hits Steve Cook in the back of the goal. And honestly, if Steve Cook had just fallen forwards, he probably would have blocked it on the line. But yeah, I mean, I know you said as soon as it hit the back of the net and he started to celebrate, that your dad just burst out laughing. And I'm not going to lie, my reaction was quite similar, because it was the most Emmanuel Latilath goal I think we'll probably ever see.
It genuinely had me lost for words at what I'd seen. The fact that he's had the composure to put in a step over and send the keeper the wrong way, go around him. His touch is absolutely horrific, diabolical. Thought he was going to knock the ball out of play for a goal kick. Comes back in. His keeper's gone absolutely flying. Has the full goal to aim at and still picks out the lad in the back of the goal. Yeah, just Latilath in an absolute nutshell. But I wasn't going to make any sort of complaint about it at all. The fact that it puts us 3-1 up, and yeah, I think the game was sort of safe at that point. And then obviously the icing on the cake, with Sid the Sloth coming off the bench.
Do you know what? First Boro goal, and it was actually a great finish. And to be honest, I mean, I know he's the conversation around him, and I'm not going to go into the details about Dan Barlaser as a player, but one thing that kind of has always been, if you watch enough of Dan Barlaser, you know that in terms of his set piece quality and some of his passing attributes, there's undoubted quality there, isn't there? And I mean, in front of goal, we haven't quite seen that quality, but it's a fantastic finish. I mean, he bends it into kind of the only place in the QPR goal where you can beat the keeper, and nicely sort of 1-2s with himself off a QPR defender. But yeah, it was exactly that, wasn't it? It was the icing on the cake. It was the celebration in the fact that Dan Barlaser actually looked in complete disbelief that he'd scored his first goal. That made me laugh even more. And yeah, it was a wonderful goal. We needed it. And to be honest, as you say, there was that spell when we were 2-0 up, and even when they'd got the goal, where actually they did put us under a little spell of pressure. And I felt that at 2-0, as you say, at 3-1, I thought even Middlesbrough can't mess this up. Not now, and not again. But when it went to 2-1, sorry, what I will just say is I thought we dealt with the game an awful lot better. And, against Norwich, as you mentioned on the podcast that day following recording that episode, not a lot of sides in this division are going to have the quality of Borja Sainz to go and whack one in the top corner and then put you under real pressure. And QPR don't have that at all. But I did feel like in general, just for probably a few minutes after that they'd got their goal, and I don't know if it's partially to do with Johnny Howson's place in the team, or if it was Luke Ayling being on the pitch at that point. I honestly don't know the leadership qualities. It's something that I'm going to leave open. I think potentially that does have an impact, but I felt like we just dealt with that situation a little bit better. We made the right decision an awful lot of times. We made the correct pass where potentially they could have try and put Doak down the line or sent him away or sent Riley McGree through on goal. And instead, we were a little bit more conservative. We just opted to maintain possession and just be a little bit safe. And that probably, I know the talking points are going to be the goals and the fact that we've put 4 past the team. But that little few minutes after QPR had scored, I just thought that element of the performance perhaps pleased me more, because I was saying last week, and I'm going to use the phrase again, basically, sometimes we shit ourselves. And we could have quite easily done that at QPR. I was throwing the questions, as were a lot of other Middlesbrough fans, basically, have Boro got a bit of a soft centre? And in that performance, I think we showed that, yeah, there might be small amounts of that within this Boro side, but there is also qualities in this Middlesbrough side where we can ride out a little bit of pressure. We saw it against West Brom. We were under immense pressure and kind of dealt with that and headed balls away and dealt with little spells of pressure where the home crowd are getting on top of the home team to basically put them under pressure and try and suck the ball into the net. And that pleased me. But, of course, the main talking point is putting 4 past a team and really, of course, at that point we didn't know what kind of performance we were going to get from Luton, but 4 goals, you kind of felt that, although everyone's been saying it didn't feel as such, although we scored 4 goals, like it was an absolute pasting like what yesterday felt like. But yeah, I mean, undoubtedly the exact type of response we needed from Coventry. And it was, look, I'm not undermining the performance and the result, but I think it was a nice team to play in terms of it gave us a great opportunity to do that. One thing I do just want to touch on, and it kind of leads us into yesterday's game against Luton. I actually and we should just mention, obviously, Neto Borges went off in that game through illness. He's been feeling unwell for a few weeks now, so he's had some medical tests, and we're kind of yet to hear of what the result of those may be. But I actually quite like the look and the dynamic and balance of Anthony Dijksteel as the right back and Luke Ayling as the left back. I felt it actually quite suited Luke Ayling in the sense that he can come in field and play passes inside. And look, against more direct wingers that are going to take him up the left flank, you're probably going to run into a few more problems. But even yesterday, there was parts of the game which really pleased me in the sense that Luke Ayling was allowed to come in field. He should have scored actually yesterday where the ball was cut back and it arrives onto his right foot. But I don't know how you felt about that, because we had the discussion about Anthony Dijksteel last week. And I actually feel like at the moment, in terms of when Boro are at their best, Anthony Dijksteel probably plays a little bit of an underrated role in that, especially with Doak on that right-hand side.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to know what? I'll sort of go back to last season and the end of last season where I was very, very, very critical of Anthony Dijksteel and in all honesty, thought that he wouldn't be here this season. And he's been solid pretty much all the way through the season when called upon. Yeah, I'm sort of I'm unsure on Ayling at left back. Look, I've had no qualms with his performances there, which is good. The fact that I've literally got nothing to say about our performances from our left back and right back is perfect for me. They just have to sit in there and do their jobs, as in defend the wingers. Okay, you've sort of seen a little bit of a different system now with Ayling at left back. You haven't seen a sort of shuffling of the right back inside and the left back bombing on. You've just got your flat back four at that stage. But yeah, I feel like it suited us well for that sort of 45-minute spell at QPR, and then obviously yesterday against Luton, it worked well, especially with, well, we'll get into it, the changes for yesterday's team. But yeah, it did suit us in both games. Yesterday, Chris, run me through sort of your morning from 11:29 onwards.
Well, Nathan, as your phone records will show, so 11:29 onwards, I am at this point walking under the flyover en route to the stadium. Of course, like all Middlesbrough fans, I have notifications on for the Middlesbrough X account. And again, like all other Middlesbrough fans, an hour before kickoff, I'm almost refreshing my feed, just waiting for that notification to come through. And the tweet comes through. My eyes descend towards the bottom of the team sheet initially, to which I see no Riley McGree. At that point, I'm a little bit annoyed. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, we're going into the internationals. I am aware of the injury problems Riley McGree's had, but we pay his wages. We should not be taking into account anything to do with his fitness for what kind of Riley McGree Australia get. Why has Michael Carrick done this again? We had a good thing going on Tuesday night. Why would you do this, Michael? To my surprise, upon looking for the name that was going to replace Riley McGree in the team, I saw number 10. And I thought, number 10, that's a little bit of a strange one. It's Delano Bergzorg. And I was walking to the match with my dad, and I said, oh, Bergzorg is starting, almost in that exact manner, almost like trying not to laugh. And to be honest, his initial reaction was, yeah, good one. Like, of course he's not. I said, no, he is. He really is. And then, of course, we straight away were into the conversation of why's Carrick done it again? Is this a conversation now that we need to have about Michael Carrick and his tinkering, and especially his constant sort of need to rest Riley McGree? So obviously at that point, I then go for a second glance of the team sheet and then realise that there's no Tommy Conway in again. And at that point, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, and this is the beauty of football. My head, before ball was even kicked, was on planet Mars. I was dialing Nathan's number, and I would never normally do this. I was ringing him up. I knew Nathan was, I mean, I actually thought that you were at work in the morning, not in the evening. So I rang you up and I thought, I don't even care that he's at work or he might still be working. He needs to know about this. What is going on here? You didn't answer initially. And then as I got close at the stadium, you rang me back and you went, yeah, I've just seen. But yeah, I mean, obviously Hackney come back into the team as well. I was in disbelief. I was in utter disbelief about what I was seeing. I couldn't possibly comprehend what Michael Carrick was attempting to do. It made absolutely no sense to me. And as I've just said, the beauty of football there, the man that comes in for him gets a brace. The man that comes in for McGree, I should say, the man that comes in for Tommy Conway gets a goal and an assist, and the goal, we'll get into it, is just absolutely phenomenal. And we absolutely dismantle Luton and put on at the Riverside undoubtedly our best attacking performance of the season. I know now, obviously, after seeing Carrick's comments, that it was somewhat to do with sort of managing minutes and obviously being wary of players going away on international duty and things like that. And it worked yesterday. It absolutely did. And I'm not even going to go into what would have been the reaction if it hadn't of. But yeah, I mean, goodness me, Nathan, before a ball was kicked, and I'm sure a lot of other Middlesbrough fans' reaction was exactly the same, but God, I couldn't even stomach the cheeseburger that was eaten in the stadium. And to be honest, it was hard enough given that the cheeseburger felt like it was I mean, I don't even know what consistency. It was like a piece of cardboard, really. But I don't want to sort of be too critical of the food at the Riverside. You know, we had the fan panel a few weeks ago where we offered suggestions to improve it. But yeah, it was hard to stomach the burger and the team news, to be honest.
Well, when you rang me up, I sort of made my case for why McGree wouldn't be in the team. Discussed it with you and your dad in the ground, possibly sports scientists saying that he was in the red zone, etc., etc. My granddad and brother both made the point to me about Bergsorg in the concourse. Can't believe he's starting. My brother said I wouldn't have even come home from university if I'd seen that team. To which I said, don't worry. I said, we'll win today. Give it a chance. We'll win today. Tapping. Absolute tapping. After the first half hour, where we sort of it took us time to grow into the game, but at the same time, Luton didn't create a whole lot. They had one chance where Adebayo set it to maybe Chong and
I think
Boro.
it was Coley Woodrow,
Oh,
and actually, I must say, just in terms of individual performances, I thought he was absolutely outstanding yesterday. But Aidan Morris actually makes a really crucial block. And I mean, I know we'd had a little bit of a joke about Corley Woodrow and Bergsorg. And I mean, basically, words to the effect of, I'm going to place a bet on the most typical Boro things to happen in this game. One of them was Bergsorg to score after the initial reaction. The other one was Corley Woodrow to score. Because in my mind, and I mean, you pointed this out to me, I'm not sure what his goal record is against Middlesbrough, but in my mind, he just scores against us every game. And I think, honestly, if you looked at the stats, I don't think he does at all. I think it's just in my mind ingrained because of being in that away end at Oakwell so many times and seeing him, Alex Mowat, Connor Chaplin, those types of players basically just run us ragged, that it's almost like an element of PTSD when I see any sort of element of that Barnsley forward line.
Yeah, yeah. Morris yesterday, fantastic. Yeah, I'd definitely agree with you on that one. It just makes us laugh watching him though, because although he is absolutely fantastic, he just looks knackered all the time, like all the time. Yeah, they didn't create a whole lot. Was sort of my point. I remember Walsh putting a shot wide as well. Dieng was sort of rooted to the spot, but they didn't create clear cut chances against us in that opening half hour. And look, the set piece kings strike again. A nice little set piece routine results in us opening the scoring. Really, really nice. Chris, run me through it.
Yeah, it's incredibly well worked, and there's two elements to the celebrations of this goal that we're going to have to talk about. As you say, it's well worked. Doak's initial sort of burst to the front post just catches Luton by complete surprise. He then flicks the ball towards the penalty spot. Aidan Morris kind of initially makes movement towards it. And I don't know if that was part of the routine or if he was intended to hit it. I'm not sure, but it worked regardless. And it falls to Bergzog and he slaps it in the back of the net. And I thought it had taken a deflection, to be honest, at first. And looking back, I don't think it does at all. But as I say, the two main points from this goal, two parts of the celebration. Now, from our seats in the West Stand, my eyes were fixated on the bench because Grant Ledbetter, and there's been an awful lot of talk about this on social media at the moment about set piece coaches and basically their prominence on the touchline whenever their side gets a attacking set piece. And if they score from it, you see them with a grin. You see some of them almost celebrating as if they've scored the goal. You see some of them with a bit of arrogance. And to be honest, a lot of the time, you see a lot of them just run straight back to the seat on the bench and sit down and hope that the cameras haven't captured them when ultimately the set piece doesn't work. But in this sense, we know that Grant Ledbetter is the man responsible for Boro's set pieces. When that ball hit the back of the net, I'm not joking you. If you cast your mind back to a few years ago, it was as if Grant Ledbetter had just leathered one in the top corner at the Riverside because he ran towards Carrick, jumped on him. Woodgate joins the kind of pylon in the technical area. Then Ledbetter sort of pulls himself away from the pylon and gives the most passionate sort of fist bump. I don't even know how to describe it, but just an absolute shower of emotion, of pride that his baby, if you want to call it that, had come to fruition and created a wonderful set piece routine and gave Boro the lead. That was the element that I was fixated on, and I absolutely loved it. He is, as I said on Twitter, the exception to these woke nonsense set piece specialists. The bit that you were fixated on, and to be honest, I kind of missed it. I just seen a load of bodies swarming around the Middlesbrough players, was the fact that Della, hashtag Della, is just hied himself straight into the fans, got himself booked. And yeah, God, do you know what? Bergzog, when we spoke about him in the season preview, we said he's going to be one of those players where, my God, he'll be frustrating. He might be absolutely horrendous in some games. And I mean, I think you could already say that in certain games, in all honesty. But then he gives you moments like yesterday, and you just think he's so invested. I almost love, and this is not a criticism at all, by the way, I love the single-minded kind of attitude that, judging from his social media and judging from sometimes his reaction on the pitch, his attitude to football and himself in general, I honestly believe Delano Bergzog thinks of himself as sort of on the same sort of pedestal as the greats of football history, sometimes even a higher power. He has an ego. He does have an ego, and I actually love it because you get celebrations. his Instagram posts. He's given himself his own hashtag for crying out loud, and I love it, to be honest, Nathan. I'm on board. I know he's frustrating, but he's just that type of character where, honestly, at one moment or another this season, and he got two yesterday, he's getting a big goal. In a game when we need one most, he's going to pop up with a goal, and I'm already waiting for the celebration.
Yeah, he's such a funny player, like just hilarious to watch. I messaged you when I got back to the car yesterday and just put, I can't wait for the Instagram post. I can't wait. And it was just absolutely everything I hoped for and more. And having been to university and met fans of other EFL clubs, a lot of them in League One as it happens at this moment in time, I sent them all his Instagram posts and just with the photo of him in the crowd with the fans and just put, this was to go 1-0 up on half an hour. Absolute, like he's just absolute chaos. That is the best sort of way to describe him. And funnily enough, he did the exact same thing for Huddersfield last season. Put them 1-0 up against West Brom, jumped in the crowd, got booked, and they got beat 4-1. So I was pleased. I was very, very pleased that it didn't come back to bite him on the arse this time. But yeah, he's so funny to sort of look at on social media. But yeah, his ego, it's something that it's
When
something.
things aren't going well, I imagine
Yeah,
it could really make you lose your shit. But when things are going well and you get a performance and a result like yesterday, it's just fantastic to watch. It's genuinely entertaining. As you say, I was waiting for the Instagram post, the hashtag, and it might just be something that me and Nathan have picked up on. I don't know. We pick up on these little, like tiny little elements that we just find hilarious. And the fact that he's given himself the hashtag Della, Della, Della. I don't know when that was created, how long it's been going on for, but it's like his own brand is just funny, but in the best way possible. And yeah, I mean, he obviously gets a brace, and it's great. But let's talk about the second goal, because speaking of celebrations, I mean, there was a bit of conversation about his gestures towards the crowd again at QPR. But I mean, yesterday we saw the best, the Emmanuel Latte laugh of, well, the Emmanuel Latte laugh that Ipswich Town chucked 20 million at on deadline day.
the March 2024 to May 2024 Emmanuel Latte.
Yeah,
Yeah, just what a sort of moment of just brilliance from him.
from him and as we should say.
Well, I was getting to the filth from Binazaz,
I
but
feel like he needs his own section, to be
he
fair. We've kind of not really touched on him yet, and he will get that, don't worry.
he will. The pass is outstanding, and do you want to know what? It's a really well worked move actually from our right hand side, and actually a lot of our sort of it was a strange one. Dork was actually sort of in the right back position in this instance, and then plays a pass inside to Clark, who I mean, I'll take the Matt Clark pre-assist for this goal and for Luton's goal. But yeah, into Azaz, the ball is fantastic. A little dink over the top, and then it's all about Lath. The touch on his chest, the next touch is just sublime. It needs to be right to create the chance, and he just sort of swivels inside on that left foot. And do you want to know what? As soon as he took that touch inside, I was already up because from our angle, I could
Yeah,
I could just see the path from his left-footed shot right into that bottom corner. I just knew it was in because it was an instinctive finish, and I knew that he wouldn't shit the bed at that point. Great finish, and you might have to correct me, but as far as I've seen, he didn't cup his ears. He just put his hands to them to block out the noise.
Yeah. The celebration I was actually referring to was against QPR, and he sort of, I know we touched on it, and I'm not getting drawn into it. Look, footballers have egos, and it's annoying at times. And you think, really, do you deserve to make gestures like that? And I'm not making like a big deal of it at all. I'm really not. But there has been an awful lot of talk, and if you watch or listen to footballer interviews or podcasts, you know that part of what make elite athletes and footballers good is a lot of the time their own self-belief. And clearly Emmanuel Latilaf has that, as well as the voices around him telling him how good he is. And I mean, he showed that. Yesterday's goal, if Erling Haaland does it, people are saying best player in the world, best striker in the world. It's that good. The touch. I mean, for all of the praise that Mengi at Luton has got over the past few months, and kind of at stages last season as well,
Sent him for a hot dog.
he sent him not only for a hot dog, but for a paper, a cuppa, and God knows what else from the corner shop, because he is literally, he's away with the fairies. He's actually probably stood next to Yusuf somewhere in the south stand, just absolutely still trying to figure out where Latilaf has gone. Yeah, it's terrific. It really is a wonderful goal. One of the best of the day. Obviously, we'll get on to the other goals that we scored, and some of the other wonderful moves. In terms of the performance as a whole, obviously we go into the break at 2-0. We come out for the second half, and I'm going to make perhaps as bold of a claim as I've made this season. For that short spell between, kind of in combination with Emmanuel Latilaf getting the second, and then Finazaz getting the third, and Bergsorg adding the fourth, in terms of our attacking fluidity, in terms of our movement, in terms of our end product, in terms of everything as a whole, in terms of our forward line, that is as good, as devastating, as irresistible as I've seen Middlesbrough look since we took Norwich and Hull to absolute pieces and just took the game away from them when we had the likes of Cameron Archer and Chuba Akpom. We were literally, and I'll use the word again, irresistible. It was just like everything. And I'm not saying that this is just going to be us sailing away on HMS Piss the League now, as much as I hope it is. We're going to have bumps in the road, I'm sure. But that was the first time. And I think importantly at home, we saw it at Norwich, but in terms of, for the most part, a lot of the fan base saying that to me yesterday, I think probably the fourth goal, I sat back and I thought, do you know what? If we do find a rhythm, we're going to blow some teams away, because we were literally the end product, the ruthlessness. There was just so much to enjoy. It was mouthwatering, some of the stuff that we were playing.
Yeah, we were good. We took our chances really well, and I think that yeah, as well as we played in that second half, it sort of also goes down a little bit to Luton trying to throw a couple more bodies forward to try and get themselves back into the game. And look, the third goal that sort of takes the game away from him from Azaz, it's actually Latilaf that plays a real part in it. He's sort of harrying a Luton midfielder who is dispossessed in the middle of the pitch by his own touch, really. Hackney plays the ball straight out to Dork with his first touch, which is just fantastic. Gets us straight on that front foot. Dork driving forward. Luton are all out of position because we've just took the ball off them in their own half. Yeah, cut back, and Ironically enough, you messaged me yesterday morning as well saying, has Finn Azaz scored at the Riverside yet? And I said no. And quite typically, everything that we sort of asked pre-game happened. Bergzo scored, Azaz scored, Latilath scored. Yeah, it was just one of those days where everything Boro touch turned to gold, really. It's a nice finish as well from Azaz. At times this season, he probably finds himself blazing those over the bar and getting absolutely battered all over Twitter.
Or, ironically enough, not putting enough power on some of the finishes. I think that's been my frustration for a lot of the season. Now, I'm not going to lie, and we'll touch on Finn Azaz. We'll touch on. We'll really kind of go in detail about our thoughts on Finn Azaz and how we're both feeling about him, and kind of going back to previous comments about if we are indeed eating humble pie and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a great finish, as you say. Composure from Doak as well. I know it's a fairly simple pass, but it's another assist for him, and that'll only give him even more confidence just to have the composure to slow himself down a little bit and cut it back. And it's a great finish. And then Della on the score sheet again. Mark McGuinness, if he's a £10 million centre half, I will show my backside in the club shop window. Yeah, I mean, Latilaf's pacing behind it, it causes problems, but Luton's backline, as you say, it's partly down to them kind of moving a few yards up the pitch and chasing the game a little bit out of, to be honest, pure desperation at that point. But again, it's actually a really clever bit of skill from Latilaf. And I thought that actually initially he'd messed it up again, to be honest, but he didn't. And he just has a little bit of a step over and then kind of in the same motion just prods it along for Bergsorg to put in the empty net. And yeah, at that point, I honestly thought we could go on and sort of get 6 or 7 or 8. It genuinely had that feeling about it.
Yeah, it did. And I just want to make the point on this because I've seen a few murmurings about it on Twitter, which I just find a little bit sort of baffling, if I'm honest, which is, oh, well, you score 4, so why don't you just try and go for the jugular? I'm like, well, the game's already won for a start at 4, and you could clearly see if anyone is sat there at the match yesterday and isn't able to spot a clear difference between Luton at 2-0, 3-0, and then as it goes 4, there's a clear shift, which is they just drop and 10 yards and they just say, yeah, 4's enough.
And pack the midfield as well.
And pack the midfield. They actually took off Adebayo and Woodrow and went one up front and went to a sort of 3 in midfield with Chong out wide. Yeah, drop deeper, pack the midfield, and just sort of shut up and
It was
just
damage limitation,
yeah,
wasn't it,
yeah.
from there?
It's damage limitation. And Borough just said, yeah, fair enough. We'll just keep the ball then, which is completely fine. It's game done. You just have to sort of see that out, and the fact that there's sort of a little bit of agitation from part of the fan base that, oh well, we could have got 5, 6, 7, 8. It's just silly. It's just silly.
I did actually see just on that point, and I do, as much as I understand where you're coming from, I get both sides here because there was I get it to a certain extent in terms of that Middlesbrough slowed the game down and Luton allowed them to do that, and it was the sake of at that point it had become a training session. But there was, and as we saw from Luton's goal, I think part of the frustration was that elements of sloppiness were starting to creep in. And there was a couple of passes, to be fair, that went astray or people were just taking too long on the ball. And I saw Luke Ayling and Carrick both. And I think this is once it had gone 4-1, sort of gesture to the crowd and say, just like, calm down. Like, we're 4-1 up. We know what we're doing. Just steady on a bit. And I get that as well, because as you said, the game's done at 4-0. It is. But, and you've seen the frustration from Senny Dieng, there's no reason that Luton should score in that game. It is just a complete, it's a shift in mentality. And I understand why it happens, but also you want to keep standards as high as possible and not let little sloppy crap goals to be conceded. And that's what did happen.
Yeah, and it's incredibly frustrating conceding a goal against a team that created absolutely nought in the game, and it's frustrating because there's a period in the game where there's a sort of a lull and Boro just sort of keeping the ball, and it gets to the point where you're making substitutions, you're bringing players on. You bring Hamilton on, exciting winger that is probably just a little bit bored at this stage of us knocking it round the midfield two and our centre halves, and he's dropped deep to come and get the ball, and Matt Clark stitched him up with a pass. It's P rolled into him. The Luton players got next to him, got tight to him, nicked the ball off him. One pass into Clark, and it's a pretty good finish in the corner. And it's incredibly frustrating. It's a shit goal to concede. It's totally unnecessary. And it's just a daft goal that stuff like that, I agree with you, needs to be eradicated. It can't be a case of you go 4-0 up and you even invite the possibility of a midfielder being able to nick a pass or intercept a pass or be tight to one of your players like that in the way that their player was able to nick the ball off Hamilton. Yeah, incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as you say, look, I understand it from both sides in terms of frustration, but obviously the kind of tempo being slowed to that extent, that's when sloppiness starts, and that's obviously what's caused the goal. And look, I'm certainly not going to lose any sleep over it, but when you concede 3 at Coventry, we could have done with a boost to the goal difference, and we have give it a substantial boost, and I think we're up there amongst the highest scorers in the division now, but it's still okay. Yes, we then go and add another one after that point. But after conceding 3-0 last week, you need the boost to your goal difference, and it basically just drops that down to an extent, first of all. So, yeah, I get the frustration, but yeah, let's move on, because the final sort of major talking point from the game, apart from Dale Fry coming back onto the pitch after God knows how long out through injury, it was great to see Dale Fry back. We must have found the Finnazaz from Plymouth, because he produces actually nearly a carbon copy of the goal that he scores against us last season. It is, especially from our angle in the stadium. And again, if you haven't listened to this podcast before, we are middle of the West, kind of the last couple of rows or seats just before the boxes start, to in terms of a bit of context, to the left-hand side of the halfway line. Of course, from the perspective of sitting in the West Stand. But like Latilaf, you see him get the ball in that position. And in terms of one of those games and one of those days where everything goes right, you know it's gone in as soon as it leaves his foot. It is an absolutely phenomenal finish. It is probably, it's a different kind of goal to Latilaf in the sense that, you know, it's more of a long range curling effort than the amazing piece of skill that Latilaf does. But it's about time we got one of these at the Riverside from Finnazaz, because he scored that many for Plymouth at home in the first part of his loan spell there last season. And yeah, it's so funny how football works sometimes, in the sense that I'd love to know the stats in terms of when sometimes people have not necessarily a goal drought, but there's a long period of time where they don't score, or in Finnazaz's case, where he hasn't scored at the Riverside for so long, and then he gets one, and then on the same day he gets his second. And it's just, to be honest, that is in that moment, he doesn't take that shot on without the confidence of the goal against Norwich and the assists against QPR and the goal against Luton, his first, and the assist for Latilaf. And we should also say, in terms of Finn Azaz, that actually for the fourth goal, it's his pass, the pre-assist. I know you give Clarkey the pre-assist for Luton's goal, but the pre-assist, it's a wonderful ball through to Latilaf in that sense for the fourth. So I just wanted to mention that. He looked brimming with confidence towards the end, and it opens up the whole conversation. And I'm more than happy to talk about it, about Finn Azaz, what he offers this Middlesbrough team, what he's offered this Middlesbrough team throughout the whole season, and basically the kind of player that we have on our hands when he's full to the brim of confidence, really.
Yeah, sort of feeling a little bit vindicated on this podcast for sticking by him. He's come under a lot of criticism pretty much since he signed, if we're totally honest, for what he's been able to contribute to the team, and especially this season when, quite ironically, we were creating lots and lots of chances, and Finn Azaz was creating lots and lots of chances. And we came on here on this podcast week in, week out, and we discussed chances in first halves of games where Azaz had played it through to Emmanuel Latilaf, and he either didn't get a shot off or passed it wide of the post. And instead of that being an assist on Finn Azaz's record, it just goes sort of unnoticed that he played that pass. Like there, you made the point of, for that fourth goal, he slides Latilaf through, and okay, Latilaf picks the opportunity to sort of slide Bergzorg in, but that goal's created by that pass from Azaz. And look, I understand that there is a lot of fans that will sit there in the ground, and the ball will be played into him, and he will try and slide a pass sort of in between the lines, in between two defenders, and sometimes a defender will sort of get there ahead of an attacker or intercept that pass. And the reaction is usually, from where we sit, just the groan of sort of 50 to 60-year-old blokes that's like, oh, Azaz again, da, 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 da. And look, the reason that he still finds his way into this Middlesbrough team is because he has the ability to be able to see those passes. And look, if he was the type of player where he could execute those passes 9 times out of 10, he'd probably be playing in the Premier League. The reason that he's playing for Middlesbrough in the Championship is because sometimes he's a little bit inconsistent with that final product, and yet he finds himself so far this season with 8 goal contributions. We've played 16 games, so 1 in 2. So look, okay, people will say, or the people that sort of perhaps have a little bit of an agenda against him will be, yeah, well, it's all well and good stat padding in games that you win 4 and 5 this week, but at the same instance, like, he opens the door against Sheffield United, who've been beat twice this season, and puts the ball on the plate for Latilaf to knock that in with his head. So look, he's a player that divides opinion, but I'm fully on board with Finn Azaz. I think that when you get moments like yesterday, and moments that I watched him when he was playing for Plymouth, and he came up with moments for them where just a little bit of magic, he'd pop up with a goal or play a pass that you just wouldn't see if you're there as a fan. Even a little dink over the top into your centre forward like he did for Latilaf yesterday. I think those outweigh the ones that sometimes just don't come off for him.
Yeah, and listen, I'm very much happy to say okay, yes, of course, I've been delighted with his form, but I've also been, and like you say, since he first signed, often, and probably more often than not, incredibly frustrated by watching Finn Azaz. And I think, especially, there was a comment actually on the podcast, not from last week, but the week prior, following the Norwich game. And it was basically, we had a discussion and kind of went off topic a little bit and spoke about Finn Azaz. And out of interest, because I remember discussing him, I went back and listened to it this morning. And basically, my words were words to the effect of, in the formation, in the type of 4-2-3-1 that we play, or whichever variation of double tens with McGree and all sorts, it's a 4-2-3-1 kind of as a basis of a formation. There is a huge creative burden on the 10 and on the 9 to get your goal contributions. And of course, everyone else is going to chip in, but they're the two main components. You think of the most successful 4-2-3-1 as Middlesbrough fans you can think of, really, is Aitor Karanka's promotion winning side. And ultimately, one of the main factors in us getting over the line was the brilliance of Gaston Ramirez in that number 10 role. There is a huge creative burden. And my point, as I say, going back to it, words to the effect of, Finn Azaz will often do 3 or 4 fantastic things in a game. But my point also was, he'll also probably do 8 other things where you think, for God's sake, it's so frustrating. But going back to that point, and a lot of people, and I think it's a wider point about kind of football fans in general now and social media, that you can't almost like be on both sides. It's either you hate a player or you love a player, and there's no like kind of understanding that actually people can have dips in form. People can, it's like, oh, here's a slice of humble pie. But if we're going to be truthfully honest, and by all means, I kind of, not quoting word for word, but going back to what I initially said, I was saying Finn Azaz does have these, or was having these moments in games where you think, God, that's an amazing pass. I didn't, like you say, I didn't possibly see that coming. But then he would do possibly 3 or 4 things in a row, and it's just so frustrating. But it goes back to the point of the number 10 in a 4-2-3-1. It's so important to get those goal contributions. It's a burden in itself, but it's a luxury, because you're almost you get the freedom of the pitch. You can pick up pockets. You don't have an awful lot of defensive responsibility. And basically, you can kind of go around on the pitch and try and be the maverick that teams need to break down defenses, especially in a Middlesbrough side that more often than not are going to come up against teams that sit really deep and say, come on then, come and break us down. But what I'm delighted with in terms of these last few games, and if we're talking since that podcast when we were referring to it, so Finn Azaz had scored in the Norwich game, in fairness. He's then added, against QPR, another assist. And then, of course, yesterday he gets 2 goals and an assist. And to be honest, as much as I hate the phrase, a really brilliant pre-assist. God, I'm cringing saying that, but he does. And the thing is, and like you say as well, it is also a point that I think does have to be touched on. Yes, okay, brilliant assist against Sheffield United, but if we're going to see Finn Azaz get the plaudits that he has deserved in these last 2 games, and for those to continue, he's going to need to produce it on a consistent basis, for one, and also against the best opposition in the league. And I don't feel at all, and it's not a point of me saying I can't possibly be wrong. There's countless times on this podcast where I've made claims and then 6 months later I looked an absolute complete idiot. But I don't feel like, oh, I'm having a huge slice of humble pie, because the fact is, Finn Azaz has produced these moments of magic. But we all saw what he was producing at Plymouth. He was producing absolute brilliance. I don't think it's ever been a question for Finn Azaz about that he has that in his locker. It's just been about him settling in at Middlesbrough and producing those moments on a more consistent basis. And in fairness to him, 2 assists, 2 goals in the last 3 games. Obviously, you can make those stats even better if you go back even further in terms of the season. And like you did say, it's almost a goal contribution once every 2 games. Look, it's from the goals yesterday, from the goals that he scored for Plymouth last season, there is undoubted talent in Finn Azaz. He's an international footballer. And that doesn't mean he can't be incredibly frustrating. But like any attacking player, the challenge is now for Finn Azaz that he continues to provide these numbers. And we obviously touched on it a little bit earlier, but as long as Ben Doak is being doubled up on, Finn Azaz is going to get probably a little bit more freedom to pick up those pockets, pick up those spaces where you've already got 3 or 2 players occupied by Ben Doak, and he can just pop into a half space and produce a pass or produce a shot. And even in terms of it, I think a lot's made about stats and things like that, but even the mental aspect of it, that yesterday for Finn Azaz probably felt like an absolutely huge weight off his shoulders, the fact that he scored at the Riverside. And you might not, but you may well now go and see him get a run of kind of goals or assists and goals at the Riverside, because I do think at times there is, even just from judging his character, judging from his interviews, it seems like he's the type of character where he's a complete confidence player. And if the crowd are on his back, sometimes you're not going to get the best out of him. When he's being filled full of confidence and playing at his best, it's when he's scoring goals, getting assists, and everyone's going, wow, we've actually got a player on our hands here. And God, I'm a Middlesbrough fan. I want him to score and assist every single game. But as I say, there's still the challenge to him. And I'm sure, he'll be absolutely inviting that challenge of going and being the maverick in this Middlesbrough side that goes and puts chances on a plate for our strikers. There's enough quality. Go and do it week in, week out. And yeah, I don't think the quality has ever been a question or him having that somewhere. It's just about unlocking that. And hopefully, in terms of him and the team, these 2 wins and these thumpings are going to prove a springboard and that click, that spark of electricity that basically makes Boro go bang and makes the rest of the division think we should have killed them when we had the chance.
Well, it's that time of year whereby, and it came up on my sort of memories a couple of days ago. 2 years ago this week, Middlesbrough went to Blackpool and ran riot and then snuck one at Carrow Road in the same week. And there was a little bit of a break after that for the World Cup. But then we just went on a run. And that run took us to the verge of the top 2. And whilst I think that in that season, there was a clear and definite top 2, looking at this table and the teams that are in and around where we are and the teams that are at the top of the table, I just think that the league is wide open, and therefore that whoever wants to take it it's there. And look, it's 2 wins in a week and it's massively important. And I said after Tuesday night at QPR, and I don't know if I said it to you or someone else who I was speaking to, but I said Tuesday night didn't matter if we didn't follow it up on Saturday. We've done that. We've got some confidence. Okay, we've got a lot of players going away for international break. Touch wood, we're fine in less than 2 weeks' time when those players return, because it's a 3-game week as soon as we're back, and we need to hit the ground running sharpish. Yeah, it is completely there for the taking, and as mentioned last week, the word is consistency. And that is what you need to be successful at this level and be in the top bracket of teams in this division. It's the ability to be able to go into games Saturday, Tuesday, and consistently pick up results. And
find different ways of winning as well.
yeah, 100%. There's sort of we discussed it last week at the end of the pod, and you said you didn't know which one would be more satisfying, just blowing teams away or just winning a scrappy, horrible 1-0. Well, we've blown two teams absolutely out the water this week, and we've got to go away from home next time out to a team that have only lost once at home so far this season. Teams that have gone there, there's West Brom, Burnley, that are both above us in the table and have only been able to come away with a point. It's a difficult place to go, and that's obviously Oxford next up after the break. And it's a new ground for me, which I was very, very pleased about. And I was lucky enough to get a ticket to go to that shite away end in a couple of weeks' time with only 3 stands. So we're not going to get very carried away as the as Championship fans might do and get all high and mighty about going to play Oxford. They definitely deserve to be at this level. There's no doubt about that. They've proven it so far this season. They're not some sort of whipping boys of the division. It's going to be a difficult challenge. They've got a lot of sort of decent players, and the main point that I've made is that the home form is pretty good, and that's the solid foundation that you need if you want to be successful in this division and if you want to try and stay up, and that is your aspiration. Now, what is quite sort of a funny one for me is that if I asked you where you fancied Middlesbrough most, at home or away from home, I think you'd probably say away from home. And that is what most fans would say as well. Ironically, we've now picked up more points at home than away from home, and we've lost more games away from home than we did at the Riverside. So
That is honestly taken me by complete surprise.
we've won 3 games away from home this season. If you count back, Cardiff won, QPR won. Any other ones in the league there? Can you remember? West Brom.
West Brom.
So there's your 3 wins, and we've also been beat 3 times away from home as well. So Watford, Sunderland, and Derby. We've only been beat twice at home, Bristol City and Coventry.
Yeah, that has taken me by surprise a little bit. And I think, against, to be honest, it's probably the nature of the defeats which makes myself and, as you say, most Middlesbrough fans probably would have had the same opinion before hearing that. But like you say, I think it's both the nature of the defeat and the type of opposition. And like we saw against Derby, although we absolutely battered them under every kind of circumstance, every stat, every bit of context that you want to apply, ultimately they had the most important stat of the day and won 1-0. With Oxford, it's going to be similar. Probably not in terms of atmosphere. Obviously, it was Derby's first game back in the division, and then you've got the added sort of needle with the Steve Gibson element. But in terms of, as you say, we've already seen there's evidence there suggest that Oxford are no pushovers. They're not just going to roll over and think, oh, Middlesbrough are going to be in and around the playoffs this season. They can just do what they like. They're going to put up a really, really big effort and try and disrupt Middlesbrough. And yeah, I think, to be honest, out of the promoted sides, I must say I'm still absolutely amazed, and it's still very early on, I must say, about the type of season that Derby are having. They've massively shocked me in terms of the results and points that they've picked up already this season. But I think everyone probably at the beginning of the season thought that Portsmouth were going to be the one side that would probably fare the best in terms of the promoted teams. And actually, I know they got the first win yesterday, but they're performing the worst out of the three at the moment. So it is a really interesting one, and as you say, a whole different dynamic with the stand in the stadium, and it's a new ground for probably, I'm sure, a lot of Middlesbrough fans. But it's a 3-game week. There's going to be time to rest, but I hate to use cliches, and I will. You saw the impact. I know they drew the game yesterday, but at one point yesterday, I'm pretty sure Millwall was sitting in 4th or 5th. And they put 4 wins together, or would have put 4 wins together, I think, or that might have been their 5th. It's all it takes in this division. I mean, we've seen it. You touched on it. We've seen it in that season after the World Cup break. We went on that run and put ourselves right within touching distance of automatic promotion. It's a team where you look at and think, it's certainly, and I'm not like disregarding and being disrespectful, but it's a team that if you want to put one of those runs together, you've got to be beating. And it's a difficult ground to go to, as we've already seen, as you've touched on with various teams that have already been beaten there this season. But like you also mentioned, the division's as wide as it's probably ever been open in recent years, to be honest, for quite a long time. And like I say, you see Millwall, they were really considered to have had a really bad start, actually. Expectation levels were sort of at rock bottom, and then all of a sudden they just shot up the division, and they're within touching distance of ourselves. And also, as I say, at one point yesterday, I'm pretty sure they were sat just a few points behind Sheffield United. Obviously, again, factoring in that they hadn't played yet, but yeah, it's the division, the Sky Bet Championship. It still remains probably the most entertaining league in the world. And just touching on Millwall, Josh Coburn scored yesterday. I'm sure you all seen that. And then Ben Gibson done a favour for it and just nodded one in. Well, I don't know if he did nod one in. I just seen that he scored and assumed it'd be a header. In regards to my statement about the Sky Bet Championship being the most entertaining league in the world, it wouldn't be a Boro podcast without reflecting on some news that we got earlier in the week. And it is a Middlesbrough podcast. It's not a Sky Blue Army podcast. But after yesterday, we may well have got Rob Edwards the sack. One manager that actually, after his win against us, we thought, that'll be them. Here we go. Everyone strap in. They then get beat off Derby, and Middlesbrough no longer have to play Mark Robins' Coventry City anymore. I mean, just touching on that, I was absolutely taken back by that when that news come through.
Yeah, it took me by surprise as well. And then trying to know what it's quite funny because he's not usually the type to come up with a really good opinion, but Paul Merson nailed it in that they've got a new owner in there, or newish owner. He's hired Robbins out the door, and he's pretty much just thought, how am I going to get eyes on us? And he's going to appoint someone like probably Frank Lampard, which is just big name, and it'll no longer be Coventry City that is brackets managed by Mark Robbins. It's now Frank Lampard's Coventry City, the same as it's Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle. It's just, look, it's owners are funny people, and if that's going to get eyes on the football club and in turn earn him more money for his coffers, that'll do him. Doesn't matter about sentiment in football. The fact that they were absolutely robbed of an FA Cup final last year by an absolute tour. But anyway, less of them. We'll see them in May.
Do you know what? Interestingly enough, though, with Mark Robbins going, it does now make, I believe, Michael Carrick the second longest serving manager in the Championship.
Mm,
And I mean, again, what a difference a week makes.
crazy, absolutely crazy. Yeah, and Edwards is actually third, who might be out of a job
Yeah.
soon. Yeah, crazy, crazy. But yeah, just overall reflections, Chris. I think this podcast's been a bit of a nice one than last week. Having
Oh,
to
goodness me. I'm almost happy for the listeners and the viewers that don't have to listen to me pose really quite, well, not morbid, but quite depressing questions towards you and anyone listening, talking about, are we a one-man team or are we too reliant on Ben Doak, and what is going to happen if we don't win these 2 games. It's nice to come into a podcast, win 2 games on the trot, be positive, spread positivity, and just overall, we're sitting here on Sunday evening recording this podcast. A lot of people are, well, me included, you included, are back to work tomorrow, and it's the international break. But you go into a little gap without football thinking, oh, for God's sake, it's come at the wrong time. But also, if you get bored during the international break, you've got 5 goals at the other side to go back and watch a million times. Inside match days and out, the feel-good factor is there. And yeah, like Finnez's, Middlesbrough just have to build on this. And I hope, and yesterday give me reason to believe, and again, it's 2 teams that we said at the start of last week that you have to go and beat. It's given me more reason than I've previously had, a lot more reason to think, actually, do you know what? If we can find any kind of consistency, there's no reason why we can't really challenge this year. So I'm extremely positive.
Well, I'm glad you've changed your tune after last week, if I'm totally honest.
Nathan, how could you have possibly been positive after last week?
Chris, I'm,
Don't get on your high horse. You were the same as me last season.
I never doubted the boys once at all. I just, I'll take my round of applause from the podcast listeners of last week and take the standing ovation. But look, in all seriousness, we have to follow it up again after the break. Oxford away, time to make it 3 out of 3. Yeah,
And that will be, I think as last week mistakenly said, we hadn't won 2 games on the bounce. It would, if we do make it 3 wins out of 3, that would be the first time we've done that this season. And as I say, Millwall produced a similar run of, well, they were only just winning every single game 1-0, it seemed, for a few weeks. But to stick 4, 5, 6 wins together, it rockets you up this division. And yeah, let's see where we can go if we do manage that.
let's have it. 100%. We'll reconvene after watching England this week. Can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, let's just not talk about that.
The one positive is this is the final one before March, so
Yeah,
we have to deal with it for a while after
that
this.
is very much the case, where once you get this one out the way, and again, complete honesty, I'm a fair weather England fan, but once you get this out the way, you get right into the thick of it, don't you? You get right into those winter fixtures, and I can't wait to get into it. And there's not another international break for at least a couple of months.
Christmas footy, baby. It's
Yeah,
coming back.
Christmas footy. Right. Okay. I think we have covered pretty much every element of football, health, fitness, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, or at least it felt like it at the beginning. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. Just a quick plug. I never really usually do this on YouTube, especially for anyone watching. We do always get more listeners on audio platforms than viewers on YouTube. But if you are watching on YouTube, please do subscribe, or consider subscribing if you're listening on audio and you don't usually watch on YouTube. I think we're on 494 subscribers. We've kind of been languishing in and around that. Listen, it's a tiny YouTube channel in comparison to a lot of others, but even getting halfway to 1,000 would mean an awful lot to us during the international break. So if you are still listening, please do subscribe. As always, do give us a rating and a review on your podcast providers, and enjoy the break, enjoy the international break, enjoy England, and let's just hope it goes quickly, because I'm ready to watch us stuff someone else. let's hope those words don't come back to bite me on the arse, Nathan. Thank you ever so much for your time, Nathan. That has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast.